Our last economic aggregate that we're going to have to talk about is inflation. So, when we're talking about inflation, that is really just our aggregate price level. It's a way of saying what is the average level of goods and services in the economy and how much does it cost in relation to what it used to cost or what it might cost in the future. We measure this using price indexes. So, if we find out the inflation rate, what we really do is we're taking the price level in year two minus the price level in year one divided by the price level in year one. Multiply that by 100. So a very basic calculation there, and very intuitive. Those price levels are measured using indexes. So it's really index in year two minus index in year one divided by index in year one. So it's all based off of a single base year. So in a base year, your inflation rate is going to be 100 because it's going to be price level uh, in year one divided by price level in year one multiplied by 100. So it's always, I'm sorry, it'll always be zero. It'll be price level in year one minus price level in year one divided by price level in year one, which is actually zero multiplied by 100, and that is, zero still. So as you have a higher level in price two, you'll have a higher inflation rate. Now there are associated costs with the inflation rate. One is the shoe leather costs, essentially time and energy it takes you to find alternatives to whatever you're buying because of the inflation. So if inflation outpaces your wage or something like that, and you need to take up time to find a cheaper alternative. Menu costs, this is taken from the idea of a menu that you get at a restaurant. Each time you have inflation going on, you need to change the menu because you need to change the prices on the menu. So that in itself does have a cost. And unit of account costs. So basically, what this is, and this is really what matters, is costs on the way inflation makes money less valuable as a unit of measurement. So if you use money to sort of measure the value of different goods, as you have inflation going on, the measure of my goods versus goods from another country is going to become messed up because my good hasn't changed, the other country's good hasn't changed, but my inflation has gone up. So it might make my goods seem less valuable or more valuable depending on the way the inflation went. And the way assets are taxed gets messed up as well as a result of overvaluing or undervaluing if there's a change in inflation that's unexpected. Now, as I sort of alluded to in that last slide, there are winners and losers from unexpected inflation. If you have unexpected inflation, borrowers may end up paying less back. The way this works is essentially I borrow $100 from you and you charge me 10% interest. Well, if you charge me 10% interest and I'm supposed to pay it back in a year, you're expecting that inflation is going to be less than 10% because you want some return on your investment. If inflation was 20%, well, then I end up paying you less back than I actually should have. So borrowers kind of win out with this unexpected inflation. Lenders are on the other side of that. They end up receiving less back, and that means that they lose. So when you lent that money to me and there was unexpected inflation, you lost. If you kept your $100, you actually would have had more and spent it on something that got you immediate value. You would have had more than had you lent it out to me. This is also the necessary reason for charging interest. Now, generally speaking, people who lend out money and charge interest also, as I said before, want to actually make money on the deal. So that's another reason for charging interest. Your nominal interest rate is your real interest rate, which is the cost of the providing the service. So when a bank gives you a loan, that is sort of the amount of money they want to make off of the loan they give you. You add that to expected inflation, and that's how you get your nominal interest rate. So if, once again, I'm loaning out money and I want to make 5% back, and I think that inflation is going to be 3% over the time period of the loan, I'm going to charge you 8%. So that is the nominal interest rate. Now, too much or too little of inflation is not a good thing. So um, when you have deflation, this is not good. This is an overall decline in prices, uh, which essentially says there's not enough demand going on and the economy is shrinking. And it means that people are going to hold on to their money because it's getting worth more and more and more. So if your dollar is worth more, you're going to hold on to it. If your dollar is worth less, you're going to be more inclined to spend it. So you do want a certain amount of inflation because you need that incentive to spend. Like I know that inflation has been typically around 2%. If inflation is 2%, I know that my money, my $100, is worth, can buy me 2% less in the future. So every year I can buy 2% less with my $100. So that gives me an incentive to either spend it or to save it in such a way where I get more than 2% back. Now, I would do that, and that works out because banks then take that money and lend it out to somebody else, and that's how they make money, and it's a good cycle. We'll get to that whole thing when we do the banking industry. Now, that's when inflation is, a good level. Deflation means that none of that is actually happening, and you're encouraged to just hold on to your money. Nobody wants to borrow when deflation is happening because you're paying it back. You're paying back your loan in money that is worth more. So it's hurting you more. So people don't really want to borrow when deflation is going on. Hyperinflation is the opposite. It is essentially saying you have way too rapid inflation. Your currency is no longer reliable. It's not stable. So if I go to buy a shirt today and it is $35, if I go in a month from now, it might be $55. Well, that's not going to work because my paycheck hasn't changed enough. So the currency at that point is no longer stable. It's no longer reliable. And if you're lending out money long term, there is no guarantee that you're getting back any sort of amount that is going to look anything like the amount that you lent out in the first place. Now, when you have hyperinflation going on, you will want to disinflate the inflation. Yeah, that works. You do want to cause disinflation. So it's reducing your rapid inflation to a more manageable level. So if it's at 10%, you do want to have disinflation to get it down to a more predictable, manageable level for people. Now that does come with a cost. When you cause disinflation, you then have a reduction in the money in circulation in a way, and this will often reduce demand and increase unemployment, essentially causing a recession. And that is just a basic introduction to inflation and some of its related definitions.